All right. Hello there, boys and girls. So today we are going to be talking about the layers of the atmosphere. So last week we started talking about weather. We wrapped up our energy unit and we started talking about the layers of the atmosphere. So we are going to continue that conversation and go a little bit more in depth. So our learning objective is still the same. You will be able to analyze and explain the properties of the atmosphere and their scale in relation to the size of the earth. All right. So before we get started, we have to do a little recap. So let's recap what we talked about last week. So we talked about the layers of the atmosphere and what did we say? What is even an atmosphere? What is an atmosphere? Right. We said the atmosphere is like a blanket around the earth, and it's the different gases that got a blanket of gases around the earth. All right. And Earth's atmosphere has five different layers. So I'm going to draw out our little diagram. So I'm going to start out by drawing a little upside down. Well, it's actually not upside down, but my pizza slice. All right, and so I'm gonna go ahead and make my 5 layers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and so here we are down here at the bottom on Earth. And the first layer, the layer that is closest to us, is called what? Troposphere. Yes, we have the troposphere. So the troposphere layer is closest to Earth. We know that that's where all the weather happens. That's where some planes fly. So this is the troposphere. And what happens to the temperature as you go higher in altitude in the troposphere? That temperature decreases. Yes. All right. Next, we have the stratosphere. All right. So we have the stratosphere. And what is so special about, what is so special and important? Oh, Miss Brown ran out of room. Stratosphere about the stratosphere layer, that ozone layer is located in the stratosphere. And remember that ozone protects us from those harmful UV rays. Okay, and so since that ozone layer protects us from those harmful UV rays from the sun, that means that that temperature is going to increase. Okay, then after the stratosphere, we have the mesosphere. Remember, mesos, middle. The mesosphere is, I keep running out of room. The mesosphere is smack dab in the middle of the 5 layers. We know that the mesosphere is the coldest layer, and since it's the coldest layer, that means that temperature is going to decrease. Next, we have the opposite of the mesosphere. We have the thermosphere, and I say it's the opposite because the mesosphere is the coldest layer, but the thermosphere is the hottest layer. It is the warmest layer. And so since it's the warmest layer, we know that that temperature is going to increase or decrease. Good job. That temperature is going to increase. All right, and then lastly, but certainly not least, we have the exosphere, and that's like the exit layer. It is closest to space. We know that air particles are very thin and spaced out, and we know that that temperature also increases in that layer as well. All right, and so as the higher we go in altitude, what happens to the air pressure? Altitude, I definitely spelled that completely wrong. Altitude, we know that air pressure decreases. And what that means is that it's more difficult to breathe. We wouldn't be able to breathe in the exosphere. We would have to have those fancy little helmets that the astronauts wear. All right. So we've talked about the layers of the atmosphere, but now we need to know what type of gases make up that blanket around the earth. Okay. So I've created a little pie chart and I want you to look at this pie chart. What do you notice? What do you see? All right. We have a big chunk over here. We have our big chunk. Then we have a semi big chunk. And then we have a small chunk. All right, so 78% of the gases in the atmosphere are comprised of nitrogen. All right, then we have oxygen, which is 21%. And then we have other gases that make up 1%. It's very easy to get it mixed up between oxygen and nitrogen because people always talk about how we need oxygen to breathe, which is true. But in the atmosphere, nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere. All right, nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere. All right, next we are going to talk about the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect. So when you think of the word greenhouse effect, what comes to mind? It can have to do with science or it can have to do with anything. Greenhouse effect. Have you ever heard of the greenhouse effect? Let's think. I know I've heard of greenhouse when people talk about gardening and people house their plants in a greenhouse. And so it's like a little shed, and that's where they keep all of their plants, and it keeps that air and that water in that little building in their greenhouse. So the greenhouse effect is when greenhouse gases in the atmosphere absorb and retain the energy radiated. So we know what radiation is because we talked about radiation when we in our energy unit when we talked about heat transfer. And that radiation is through heat waves. So that energy that those gases are absorbing and retaining the energy radiated from land and ocean surfaces. So a key term is that if the gases are being absorbed and they're retaining that energy, that heat, all right, from land and ocean surfaces. So greenhouse gases are essentially just Earth's thermal blanket. So it's kind of keeping Earth warm because the greenhouse effect helps regulate Earth's average surface temperature and keeps it habitable. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you guys a picture, but that greenhouse effect essentially is absorbing and retaining that heat given off from the oceans, the seas, those water, that ocean surfaces and land surfaces, and it's kind of trapping it in Earth's atmosphere so that overall Earth can be warm. Because if Earth were too cold, we wouldn't be able to function. But it's also keeping Earth from getting too warm. All right, so greenhouse gases are Earth's thermal blanket. So, what are even greenhouse gases? What's the greenhouse gas? Is nitrogen a greenhouse gas? So let's talk about our greenhouse gases. So here's the picture that I was talking to you about. So here's like the blanket, okay? And it's absorbing that heat. It's coming from the sun and the earth. It's being transferred, that heat is being transferred to the earth through radiation, but through those heat waves. I promise Miss Brown writes way better than this in person. All right, so that heat is being transferred through radiation, and the greenhouse gases, here are greenhouse gases, it's trapping it and it's absorbing it so that the overall temperature of Earth is staying either, it's not getting too hot and it's not getting too cold. All right, so once again, here's that heat coming from the sun and it's radiating to the earth. And then here's the greenhouse gases that it's like that blanket and it's absorbing and trapping that heat to regulate Earth's temperature. So greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, and methane. So water vapor, carbon dioxide, and methane. I want you guys to write these down on the back of your fill in the blank notes. The greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, and methane. All right, but if if the greenhouse gases are supposed to regulate the Earth's temperature, then why are people talking about global warming and how we have to do better at keep what we put into the ocean, not into the ocean, but the overall atmosphere? So let's talk about that human impact on Earth. So it's always kind of that touchy subject because it's like we're really kind of endangering our Earth, our planet. So let's talk about what's happening. So the greenhouse effect can be enhanced by an increase in the gases that trap the heat in the atmosphere. So since the industrialization period, we've been contributing more and putting more gases into the atmosphere than normal. Back in the day when they didn't have automobiles, when they didn't have big factories, when they didn't weren't using so much pollution, polluting the air, the greenhouse gases, there weren't a lot of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But that can be enhanced in a couple of different ways. So human activities such as the release of greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are coal and oil, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about fossil fuels tomorrow. And the use of aerosol sprays also contribute to the change of Earth in the Earth's atmospheric composition. Okay, so all these things, so fossil fuels, aerosol sprays, that's contributing to those more greenhouse gases being put into the atmosphere. Human activities can be harmful or beneficial to the atmosphere. When humans clear, cut, and burn forests, more carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. But planting new plants can help to absorb carbon dioxide from the environment. So I know that was a bit wordy. So here's human contribution to the atmosphere in another term. So planes, cars, trucks, and trains, all of those things use fossil fuels, that gasoline, and that's pushing that gasoline back into the atmosphere and causing those greenhouse gases to increase. Concrete, which I didn't even know that concrete, when you mix concrete together, all the materials together, it's releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. All right, electricity uses fossil fuels. Agriculture, so a lot of fertilizers that people use in agriculture are releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. All right, oops, I clicked a little too fast. So, what are some ways that we can do to help the atmosphere? What are some ways that we can kind of pull back and not release so many greenhouse gases and pollute the atmosphere? So, I chose this gift. It's an Avengers Endgame. If you've seen it, great. If you haven't, that's okay. But this is at the very last scene. And I chose this gift for a specific reason because it's like everyone is coming together to team up against the bad guy. They're all coming together, the different Avengers, the different galaxies. They're coming together to fight off the bad guy. And so if we all come together and do just one or two of these or just something simple, we could all help that global warming, the overall increase of greenhouse gases. So some ways we can do that are getting hybrid cars. So I know you guys aren't driving, but a lot of more people are purchasing, a lot of more parents, a lot of more adults are purchasing hybrid cars, those electric cars that you just have to plug up so that we're not using so much gas. So I don't have a hybrid car, but my dad is super for hybrid cars and has been trying to get me to get one for the longest. So hybrid cars is one way. Planting trees. I know this is something that you guys can do. Everybody can plant a tree, but planting trees. Recycling. So this is something that I try to do as much as I can. And also reducing your food waste. Using reusable bags. So I always, y'all know Miss Brown loves Hello Kitty, so I have my Hello Kitty reusable bags, and I'll take those with me when I go to Aldi's or Publix or Walmart. Instead of using that plastic, I'm using my reusable bags. All right, and then turning off the lights when not in the room. This is something that everybody can do. We can all do this. Making sure we're turning off our lights when we are not in the room, so we're not using up that electricity. If your parents are also gonna love you because you're not running up their electrical bill. All right, buying organic and local foods, and this also helps the community. You're supporting those small local businesses. Okay. So tomorrow we are going to talk more in depth about fossil fuels. We're going to talk more in depth about renewable and non-renewable resources. And then we're also going to create a little flip book that has to do with the layers of the atmosphere. All right. So I want you to go and check your emails if you have not checked your emails. I sent out an email to all parents and students just kind of explaining how I'm going to be restructuring class. All right. And so in there, you guys have an extra credit opportunity. So I want everyone to get one science notebook. I want you to get a spiral notebook, composition notebook. I had on my supply list for the beginning of the school year for everyone to have one. But now I'm offering extra credit. I want you to get a science notebook, and then you're going to head over to Flipgrid, and you are just going to post a quick video of you showing me your science notebook. Feel free to decorate the cover. Feel free to add. I know back in the day when I was in middle school, I used to tear out pictures from magazines, and I used to glue them on the covers of my composition notebooks. It was so much fun. So if you want to do that, if you want to add some stickers, whatever you want to do, but I want you to get your science notebook, and I want you to record a video on Flipgrid showing to me that you have your science notebook, and you will receive extra credit. So it's super easy. It's super quick. The Flipgrid code will be in Schoology. I will post that for you guys. And if you have any questions, as always, do not hesitate to reach out. Bye, guys.